Hello everyone, my name is Rick van Bruggen from Neo, and here I am again recording a Neo4j Graph database podcast. And my guest today is all the way in the UK, Jesus. Hi, Jesus.
Hi Rick, how are you?
Hey, I'm always scared of pronouncing your name in the wrong way. I'm
You
sorry.
did great. You did great. I've met much worse than that, so that was brilliant.
Okay, okay, Jesus, you just joined Neo a couple of months ago
Exactly.
as a pre-sales engineer. But you have a long-standing history with graphs. You even did a PhD on the subject, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it all started, probably more than 10, nearly 15 years ago. So quite a while. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're right. Yeah, it's all started in the semantic technologies space, in the RDF space. So that was the first time I was exposed to modeling data as graphs. And yeah, there's been a long story. After the PhD, I did work for a company in London called Ontology, where we did use graphs to basically solve problems, help companies mostly in the telecommunications sector.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and as you say, 2 months ago, I joined the field engineering team in the London office.
That's super. Well, so what was your PhD about exactly then? It
Well,
was.
at the time, I mean, I did model. I mean, formalize a way of translating relational schemas into ontologies. Ontologies is the way you represent metadata in the RDF model.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll have time. We will have time to talk about that. But yeah, essentially, it's a kind of an automated mapping between relational schemas and ontologies. That's what I.
There's a lot of people looking at that, I think, still today. I mean, I get that
Oh
question
yeah,
quite often, yeah.
absolutely.
So another question, I mean, for you, because you've been working so long in the RDF world, what's kind of like the difference between the RDF semantic technology space and the property graph model of Neo4j? What's like the key difference for you?
Right. Well, I'd say you can answer this question from two perspectives because obviously RDF is as you say, is a model, is a representation paradigm. Then there's the different implementations, the triple stores that you can find in the market. But as a model, I think well the main the main thing they have in common is the fact that they both represent data as a graph, and
Yeah.
that makes them very very close to each other.
Hmm.
The difference I would say is that RDF is as simple as it can be. It's only based on the notion of URIs to identify resources or nodes, if you want to establish the parallelism with the property graph. But then there's just this element called the triple,
Yeah.
the subject, predicate, object, and that's all the construct that you have to model your domain. So, uh, and of course that I think that's the biggest difference because in the property graph model you have, of course, you have nodes with their properties. You have relationship with the properties, and they have this brilliant thing that's this whiteboard friendliness, right? This excellent thing that's the way you conceive it, the way you model it in your head, in your whiteboard, is exactly the way it's represented and stored physically. Whereas in RDF, there's still this sort of gap where you have to translate that into triples, things that may sound simple, like giving a weight to a relationship. So there's a connection between Rick and Jesus because we work together, but you want to give a weight to this relationship. Well, that's something that's completely natural in the property graph, but it's not something you can do directly on a triple. So you have to model this relationship probably as an intermediate resource. I mean, it's more of a there's a bit of a gap. And I think that makes it sometimes less intuitive, sometimes a bit less humane, if you want. So that's the
Yeah,
difference.
yeah.
And
Well, I mean, actually, that was sort of what I was hoping you would say because
yeah,
I've always been sort of told that the difference is really on the predicate. The fact that it's so difficult to qualify a predicate in the RDF model.
that's
Uh,
exactly, yeah.
yeah.
That's
So,
and yeah. Then there are other interesting things in RDF. The whole idea of being able to use the model itself to represent the metadata, the ontology, and that gives you in certain cases some interesting powerful things that you can do, like querying both the data and the metadata at the same time. So, but I would say that the biggest thing is more what they have in common, and is the fact that they look at data as a graph, as
yeah.
a set of connected
What
nodes rather than yeah.
what attracted you to the graph in the first place? Why did you get into this field in the first place, if I may ask?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, I think there's two things. One was this incredible flexibility. I mean, at the time when I started, we didn't talk about NoSQL. That's a concept that was coined later.
Yeah.
But this idea of being able to start storing data without having to model it up front, I thought that was brilliant. And that gives you an incredible flexibility. This thing of schema-less model, or at least implicit schema, depends on on how you talk about it. But this flexibility was one of the things, and the other one, I'd say the possibility of inferring new knowledge, basically based on the information on your graph. You identify patterns, and you can enrich your graph with new knowledge based on the data elements that you have.
Yeah.
So I think probably these two things were what attracted me to this world, and I think that unbelievably useful and powerful.
After a couple of months at Neo, what do you think is the most interesting use case that you've seen so far? Anything that jumps out?
Sure. Well, I'm amazed by the thing is the great thing about Neo is how you can use and update your graph in real time. At what speed you can not only read it and query it, but also keep it up to date, and how it's possible to identify, fraud rings, for example, is one of the cases that I like the most. Being able to pick up the status of your accounts, your users, their information, the transactions that they're carrying out, and at the same time be able to detect the patterns that identify a fraud ring is one of the ones that I'm enjoy the most.
And do that in real time, you mean?
Exactly,
right?
the real time is the key thing there, and that's pretty impressive. Yeah,
It's not like what my experience a couple of weeks ago with my Amex card. I get a fraudulent transaction on Friday and I get a call on Monday.
oh yeah, just in time, right?
Just in time. It didn't really work. No, very cool. So where do you see this going, Jesus? Where's the industry taking us, you think?
Well, I think the adoption is growing. I mean, it's amazing the number of different organizations and companies that we talk to. I mean, I can't think of a single vertical, a single sector that would not benefit from scenarios where modeling data as a graph adds incredible value. So I think adoption will definitely grow, and that's one of the things. And then the other one that I thing is going to be key as well is about integrating the graph with the rest of the data architecture. I mean, these days there are so many alternatives to represent data, and some of them, adequate for certain scenarios. I'm all for peaceful coexistence with other approaches. So integration, I think, is going to be the other important one, and I think being able to expose the graph in ways that make it easy to interoperate with other stores. Sometimes not all the information is going to be in your graph, but the extremely valuable information in your graph will need to be combined with some external information. That's one case. Or you will want to visualize it in different ways using BI tools. Well, you name it. I mean, there's so many elements now in data architectures that integration, I think, is going to be the other important aspect that we will see developing in the next few years.
There was one thing that I wanted to ask you, and obviously forgot. I'm so good at this podcasting thing. Is actually you've done a lot of work on virtualization of data, right? And that
Yeah.
sort of integrate, and that sort of links to that integration story, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's actually I did work in the data integration space with data virtualization company in the couple of years between Ontology and Neo, and yes, that I'm particularly interested in that, and it's a way of integration, data virtualization, that's based on this idea of wrapping the sources in make them look as if they were relational, even though they're not. So you're not copying the data into centralized storage. You leave the data where it is, and you kind of define the logic to extract it and combine it. And I think that was a powerful paradigm for sort of new ways of representing data, like the graph, and make it easy to integrate them with other technologies and other types of stores. And yes, that's.
So in a case like that, the Neo4j would be one of the sources of virtualization. Is that what I'm
That's correct.
understanding? Okay.
One essential one. That's the thing, because the importance in the end is what value is in your source. I mean, Neo can be perfectly for example, in an MDM scenario, it can be the core, it can be your master model, and then you can link it with the different rest of the elements that provide the detailed information about the entities. But exactly. It will be one of the sources, and the data virtualization will expose it in a way that's easily consumable by say, for example, BI tools in analytics scenarios, or that's one of the.
Are there any examples of that yet? Like open source virtualization tools that integrate with Neo
Well,
already, or?
there's not much, to be honest. There's one quite limited community edition of one of the vendors called Denoda, which is the one I used to work for.
Oh, yeah.
There's another one from JBoss, but I have to say there's not much publicly available in there. I mean, JBoss would be the obvious option. I'm actually now trying to work a little bit with it and try to build some sample integrations with Neo, and yeah, that's what you can find.
I think this is like kind of like a community call for help. It's
yeah. I'll definitely hope to be publishing something soon, or at least on some ideas or some small examples that can, inspire people to look at these.
That would be great. Cool. I think we're going to wrap up here. We like to keep these podcasts quite short and snappy, but thanks a lot for sharing your perspective. I think that was very interesting, although because of my limited presentation skills, a little bit chaotic.
Fine. No, it was great to have this chat with you, Rick.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesus, and I'll see you soon. Yeah.
Lovely. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye now.